Let's go back and look at those drawings again. If you said for the first drawing, that person is extremely suspicious of other people, that would be a mistake because strangely drawn eyes do suggest suspicion, but in this series that you saw, strangely drawn eyes were less likely to be associated with suspicion than normal eyes. If you said, is worried about his masculinity for the second picture, that's a mistake because exaggerated muscles suggest worries about masculinity, but they were actually less likely to be associated with worries about masculinity than normal muscles. Well, if you made one or more mistakes, you're in good company. Most people make these kinds of errors. That's because we're susceptible to seeing illusory correlations. When we're prepared to see a particular association, we are particularly likely to see it. In this case, funny eyes suggest suspicion, so we're likely to remember the slide that showed this association. Emphasis on muscles suggests worries about masculinity, so that's the slide that we remember. Since we have theories about all kinds of things, we can't trust our memory about associations to tell us what the relationship is. If we have a theory that X goes with Y, we're likely to notice and to remember the cases where that's true and not notice or not remember the cases where it's not true. So even when the data don't actually support a particular plausible belief, we're quite likely to think it does. The drawings and symptom pairings that you just saw were actually invented by my research team, but the draw at person test is real. It was given by psychiatrists and psychologists for decades, even though it is literally worthless. You can't tell anything about anybody from the picture they draw, except that it's a very bad test of intelligence. Smarter people do tend to make better drawings, but nothing else about them predicts anything. So how could they do that for decades, continue to make this error? Well, they never set up a 2x2 table. The slides that showed a plausible association got remembered, and the other ones didn't. And that principle explains why psychologists and psychiatrists believe the Rorschach could tell them something about their client. That's the ink blotch, you'll remember. Some of the alleged associations that were claimed about the Rorschach test were those that lay people would find intuitive. Some were more arcane. They were suggested by psychoanalytic theory. But whatever the origin of a theory, if you expect an association, that's what you're likely to see. Then the erroneous belief about correlation gets sustained because you keep on seeing confirmations. So if it's the draw a person test that you've been giving for years, you say, just as I thought, this guy who drew the big muscles is worried about his masculinity. Nailed it. We'll be talking about this kind of problem in Lesson 6. We're subject to what's called a confirmation bias in all kinds of ways. We rest content with confirming data, and we don't think to look for data that might disconfirm our hypothesis. I've seen lots of drawings with big muscles by men who were worried about their masculinity. But how about the drawings with big muscles by men who weren't worried about their masculinity? And how about all the men who were worried about their masculinity who didn't draw big muscles? You have to keep in mind all 4 cells of the 2x2 table, and this fact escaped hundreds, if not thousands, of psychiatrists and psychologists. The plausibility principle is extremely important because we can't trust our casual observations about associations. If an association is plausible, we're likely to see it, whether it's there or not. If it's not plausible, we're likely to fail to see it, even if it exists and is quite strong. This is true even for animals. Dogs are almost impossible to teach that they can get fed if they yawn. That's not been the way dogs have been getting food these many eons. Dogs readily learn to go left at a maze if a light comes on at the left and to go right when it comes on at the right, but it's almost impossible for them to learn to go left if it comes on at the top and right if it comes on at the bottom. They're prepared to see directions that make sense, left and right. They're not prepared to see left and right matched with top and bottom. Cats readily learn that they can get food by pressing a lever or pulling a string, but it's only with very great difficulty that they learn that they can get food by licking or scratching themselves. Pigeons will actually die before they learn that not pecking at a light will get them food. Pigeons haven't made it this far by assuming that not pecking could ever get them fed. So we've just seen that theories are important. They determine what you're going to be able to see. And if you don't have any theories at all, it's going to be hard to see any kind of association at all. In the next segment, we'll look at the case of when you don't have any theory at all. How easy is it to detect correlations?